TV for me is the right place at the right time. I didn't know whether to go back to New Zealand. I sort of took a year sabbatical with injuries and things like that.
He's not healthy. I'm not going to change my mind all of a sudden. And we used to compare Tiger Woods at his best to other people when they were average. Now we're comparing Tiger Woods when he's average or unhealthy to he at his best. Both, I think, are unfair comparisons.
He was gutless. That's what Frank Nobilo said about one of golf's most beloved figures, and that moment sent shockwaves through the entire sport. For years, Nobilo built a reputation as golf's most unforgiving truth-teller, the calm New Zealand analyst who refuses to sugarcoat failure or pretend mediocrity is excellence. But how did someone known for measured intellectual commentary become the sport's most brutal judge? The answer lies in 5 explosive flashpoints that turned a respected former pro into the man fans either worship for his honesty or despise for his harshness. These aren't random outbursts. They're the product of a philosophy that demands perfection, punishes betrayal, and refuses to accept comfort over truth. What you're about to hear are the stories behind Frank Nobilo's most controversial targets, the moments that built his reputation as the analyst who can't stand excuses, failure, or dishonesty. The friction didn't happen overnight. It started with relationships that soured, standards that clashed, and a refusal to stay quiet when others would nod and smile. 5 figures became the center of this narrative, each representing a different kind of disappointment in Nobilo's uncompromising worldview. Some earned his scorn through moral failures, others through professional incompatibility. A few simply couldn't meet the technical standards he demands from elite players. Phil Mickelson sits at the top of this list, and for good reason. This isn't about swing mechanics or tournament results. This is personal, rooted in years of friction that finally exploded into public condemnation. Nobilo and Mickelson faced each other during President's Cup competitions, where Nobilo represented the international team and Mickelson wore American colors. Behind the scenes, away from cameras and crowds, Nobilo experienced a side of Mickelson that few discuss openly. On the 5 Clubs podcast, Nobilo chose a specific word to describe those encounters. He said he suffered with Phil, whether in President's Cup team rooms or witnessing behaviors that violated his sense of competitive respect. Suffered. That's not a casual complaint. That's the language of endurance, of tolerating something fundamentally wrong. The breaking point came when Phil Mickelson attacked the PGA Tour and embraced the Saudi-backed LIV Golf League. For Nobilo, this wasn't a business decision or a personal choice about money and freedom. This was betrayal. When reporters asked Nobilo about the unflattering stories surfacing in books and articles about Mickelson's character, most analysts would hedge, protect access, maintain relationships. Nobilo did the opposite. He confirmed every damaging detail, stating that the bad stuff people were reading was all true. Think about the weight of that statement. A peer, someone who competed at the highest level, publicly validating the character assassination of a fellow professional. Nobilo wasn't reporting on controversy. He was co-signing it, lending his credibility to the idea that Mickelson's flaws were real and pervasive. But Nobilo didn't stop there. He acknowledged that Mickelson has dual personalities, capable of genuine generosity like sending 2 signed Masters flags when only one was requested for Nobilo's foundation. That good side exists. Yet Nobilo described the current version of Phil as tragic, watching a glittering legacy dismantle itself in real time. The statesman role Mickelson tried to claim during the LIV golf saga was, in Nobilo's words, disastrous. He wasn't equipped for it ethically or temperamentally. When asked if Mickelson could ever redeem himself or find a path back to respectability, Nobilo answered with one word: no. That finality tells you everything. The bridge is burned completely. Mickelson represents the moral failure Nobilo cannot forgive, the player who chose greed and ego over the sanctity of the game itself. Make sure you're subscribed because we're just getting started. Drop a comment and tell us which of Nobilo's critiques you think was completely justified and which one went too far. Did he have the right to call out these players, or is he just too harsh for modern golf? If Mickelson is the moral disappointment, Brandel Chamblee is the professional war that never ends. These two work together on Golf Channel's Live from Coverage, forced into proximity despite fundamentally opposing views on how to analyze the sport. Chamblee is a former journeyman pro-turned-obsessive researcher who builds arguments from data, historical absolutes, and provocative theories designed to spark debate. Nobilo approaches commentary through lived experience, the gray areas of competition, and a respect for the difficulty of performance under pressure. These philosophies cannot coexist peacefully. Nobilo has publicly criticized Chamblee's entire broadcasting strategy, stating that arguments make for good television, but being contentious for the sake of being contentious wears thin. That's a direct attack on the Chamblee brand. Nobilo is saying his colleague manufactures outrage, creates control contrarian positions not because they reflect truth, but because they fill airtime and generate clicks. To someone like Nobilo, who views analysis as a sacred duty to explain the game's harsh realities, this performative debate is a degradation of the profession. The tension isn't just intellectual, it's physical. Chambly himself confirmed that during their playing days, the locker room consensus was that Nobilo and Ernie Els were the two players you least wanted to fight because they were crazy and tough. Chambly noted that Nobilo's wrists were enormous and admitted he always keeps at least an arm's length of distance when debates heat up on set. This isn't a joke between friends. This is genuine caution, the acknowledgement that their arguments could cross a line into something more dangerous. The great forward shaft lean debate of 2014 stands as the monument to their incompatibility. Chambly argued for extreme forward shaft lean based on still photos of Ben Hogan. Nobilo countered that modern equipment and human physiology made that move dangerous and outdated. The argument escalated until the tension was visible to everyone watching. Crew members felt uncomfortable. Viewers sensed genuine hostility. Satirical golf writers picked up on this immediately, noting that it's obvious Nobilo loathes Chambly and would happily ram a gap wedge down his throat if he could get away with it. While exaggerated, that observation captures what millions of viewers see every broadcast. Nobilo's stoic mask cracks when Chambly launches into another soliloquy, revealing pure exasperation underneath. Chambly isn't on this list because he's wrong or bad at his job. He's on it because Nobilo finds his entire philosophy exhausting and incompatible with respectful, honest analysis. They represent two incompatible visions for what golf commentary should be, forced to share a set while silently despising each other's methods. Jason Day's inclusion on this list stems from a single technical critique that exploded into nationalist outrage and media controversy. Unlike the moral condemnation of Mickelson or the personal friction with Chambly, the supposed hate for Day is actually a misreading of Nobilo's rigid professional standards. Leading into the 2018 Masters, Day was chasing the world #1 ranking. During the live from preview show, Nobilo and Chambly conducted a detailed breakdown of Day's game. That's when Nobilo delivered the verdict that haunted him. He called Day's iron play one-dimensional and poor, arguing that while Day possessed immense power and a world-class short game, his reliance on high-launch, high-spin ball flights was a fatal flaw at Augusta National. The backlash was immediate and vicious. Australian media outlets framed the comments as Nobilo, a fellow golfer from the region, slamming Day unfairly. But Nobilo's critique was grounded in statistics. At that time, Day ranked 183rd in strokes gained approach and 211th in fairway proximity. These aren't opinions. These are measurable failures and a critical part of elite golf. From Nobilo's perspective, pointing out these numbers is the entire job of an analyst. Day and his supporters saw it differently. They felt betrayed by someone who should have been an ally, attacked for trying to improve rather than celebrated for his achievements. Nobilo acknowledged that Day was extremely aware of these rankings and working to fix them, but he refused to grade on a curve or soften his language just because Day is talented and likable. The hate directed at Nobilo for this critique reveals a fundamental clash between modern sports culture and Nobilo's old-school standards. Day represents the athlete who relies on physical gifts and mental toughness, but lacks the technical versatility Nobilo believes separates greatness from excellence. Tiger Woods appears on rumors of this list constantly, but that's a complete misunderstanding of Nobilo's actual position. Nobilo doesn't hate Tiger Woods. He hates the delusions surrounding Woods in his later career, the refusal of fans and some analysts to accept the brutal reality of a broken body. The primary source of supposed conflict was the debate over Tiger's swing changes. Brandel Chambly famously argued that Woods sabotaged his career out of ego, changing a winning formula for no good reason. Nobilo took the opposite view, defending Woods by arguing that he couldn't swing well because he was riddled with injuries. The body broke down, forcing adaptations that looked like choices but were actually survival mechanisms. In this dynamic, Nobilo was actually defending Tiger's agency and dignity, refusing to blame him for outcomes caused by physical destruction beyond his control. But because Nobilo was often the analyst on television, saying Tiger cannot win due to health limitations, fans branded him a hater. They wanted to believe Woods was invincible, that willpower and greatness would overcome fused vertebrae and destroyed knees. Nobilo wouldn't participate in that fantasy. Nobilo's commentary on Woods reveals deep empathy and sadness, not contempt. He spoke about how the golf course used to be Tiger's sanctuary, a tightly controlled environment where he was wrapped in a blanket of admiration and respect. Now that sanctuary sanctuary is gone. Woods no longer controls the conversation. The scrutiny follows him onto the course, destroying the one place he felt safe. Nobilo described Woods as always seeming lonely, withdrawing further as the pressure intensified. This isn't the language of a hater. This is the observation of someone who understands the cost of greatness and mourns the loss of a peer's peace. The fifth target is the most relentless and unexpected. It's you. Or more specifically, it's the player of EA Sports PGA Tour video games, the digital golfer subjected to Frank Nobilo's voice lines, programmed to criticize nearly every shot. I.e., in the virtual world, Nobilo's reputation as a hater reached its peak, cementing his image for an entire generation that might barely know his playing career. EA Sports directed Nobilo to play the grumpy veteran, the impossible-to-please analyst who contrasts with the enthusiastic play-by-play announcer. But the programming went too far, creating a phenomenon where Nobilo berates players for objectively successful shots. Reddit threads overflow with complaints about Nobilo's digital hostility. One of the most cited examples is his line about firing the caddy for choosing the wrong club on a shot that lands just past the target. In professional golf, publicly calling for a caddy's termination is a nuclear option reserved for catastrophic failures. In the game, Nobilo suggests it for minor miscalculations. Players report shooting 4 under par, solid rounds by any measure, only for Nobilo to grumble that it's too bad the round wasn't mistake-free. Another user documented Nobilo describing a shot as the worst he'd ever seen in his entire career, suggesting the player should face medieval punishment for the offense. This digital persona verifies a critical insight about how Nobilo is perceived. He's been typecast as the bearer of bad news, the voice that reminds you that good isn't good enough and great still has flaws. The EA Sports player is the most universal target because everyone who plays the game experiences Nobilo's criticism firsthand, usually within the first few holes. The hate isn't personal, it's algorithmic, a caricature of his real-world standards turned into a weapon against digital mediocrity. But that caricature bled into reality, shaping how fans expect Nobilo to behave when real golfers make real mistakes. These 5 targets reveal a philosophy, not a personality disorder. Phil Mickelson violated the moral code by attacking the institution. Brandel Chambly violated professional integrity by prioritizing performance over truth. Jason Day violated technical standards by refusing to adapt a limited game. Tiger Woods became the false target because fans couldn't handle reality. The EA Sports player violated the unforgiving standard that golf demands, and Nobilo refuses to compromise on. Each represents a different failure in Nobilo's worldview, where the game's difficulty is sacred and the truth must be spoken regardless of comfort or popularity. This isn't about cruelty or personal vendettas, it's about maintaining a barrier between excellence and excuses. Nobilo believes golf is agonizingly hard, that professional conduct is sacred, and that the scorecard never lies. When players betray those principles, whether through moral failures, technical limitations, or manufactured narratives, they run into the Nobilo doctrine. That doctrine makes him the most polarizing analyst in golf, the figure who draws lines and refuses to cross them, even when everyone else already has. But here's what critics miss. Frank Nobilo isn't just a hater searching for targets. He's a guardian of something fragile. In an era where hot takes dominate and truth bends to clicks and engagement, Nobilo represents an old standard. He's the last barrier between comfortable narratives and brutal honesty. He demands that greatness be earned, not declared. He insists that character matters as much as talent. He refuses to pretend that wishing makes things true. That philosophy makes enemies, but it also makes him one of the most valuable voices in sports. Frank Nobilo doesn't hate lightly. When he turns against a player or a colleague, it's because they've violated something fundamental in his understanding of what golf should be. Mickelson betrayed the game itself. Chambly betrayed honest analysis. Day settled for being good instead of complete. Woods became a symbol of denial rather than acceptance. The video game player refuses to be perfect. In Nobilo's world, these aren't small failures. They're the erosion of everything that makes golf worth respecting. And if respecting the game means being called a hater by people who prefer comfort over truth, he'll take that label every single time. Before you go, subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a comment and let us know where you stand. Is Frank Nobilo right to hold players and analysts to these impossible standards? Or has he crossed the line into being too harsh for the modern game? The debate continues, but one thing is certain. Frank Nobilo will never stop telling the truth, even when the truth makes him the most hated analyst in golf.